Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast, Tuesday, June 15th. Michael Beller, Brandon Funston, Jake Seeley here with you on the app, on YouTube, on any podcast app that you prefer. We're bringing it to you in every way possible here as we get ever closer to fantasy football draft season in earnest. Guys, I am in the middle of my second best ball draft of the summer. I try to start one as the previous one is ending. It's a great way to keep up with how ADP is changing. You guys getting involved in any best ball, anything early like that? What are you guys up to so far?
A handful of mock drafts, not legit best ball, play them out in a best ball fashion kind of a deal. But yeah, I've kind of been swimming around in some drafts, so feeling grounded in terms of the landscape so far.
Probably I'm already close to 10. I don't even know anymore. Not best ball yet, though. That's the problem. Well, no, the two dynasty ones I did with Donkey Teeth and those guys over at Razzball, those were both best ball. Fortunately, Jake, that was the only way I was going to do them with the dynasty best ball.
I saw a tweet from you yesterday, patting yourself on the back for what looked like a pretty good draft you had.
Oh, that was that was actually for the Football Diehards magazine, which everybody will have to, go check out, support them. Congratulations to Emil finally getting the Hall of Fame. But yeah, that was another one yesterday that we did. And I did that one at stops in the car, but I had my cue ready to go. I was actually in the car for part of it. There was actually a pick I missed. I will say that don't do it, because there was one player that, looking back, I didn't realize was still there because I didn't have my draft board to cross out names as it going. So, did you want to know? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Who was it? Who was it? And who did you take instead of that person?
Well, so the draft, the way that it was going, I went 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, took a 3rd running back in round 5. And then round 6 came around. Chark was still there. And I might have considered this person even at Chark. Round 7, Dak was still on the board. I'm just like, God, this is stupid. This is why industry leagues are like kind of fun at the same time. Like so I took Dak Prescott, not really realizing Odell Beckham was still on the board, who would have been my 4th wide receiver. On the turn coming back, I got Curtis Samuel. So it's kind of looking at not that bad. Would I rather have Odell Beckham and Aaron Rodgers, who went right after that pick, or would I rather have Dak Prescott and Curtis Samuel like I ended up? I'd probably go Rodgers and Odell Beckham, but those are the kind of things that happen when you're in the car.
Yeah, exactly.
I go the other way. So it's.
You'd rather have Dak and Samuel?
Yep, I think so.
I think I would too, because of the Dak factor.
Yeah.
It's not even so much that. It's the upside of it, and that's a huge if Odell Beckham is healthy. I mean, Odell Beckham as my 4th wide receiver. I mean, I definitely understand the Dak factor, but it wasn't the fact that Aaron Dak to throw 400 yards a game. Like he did last year.
Well, we're also like, what are we expecting from Aaron Rodgers? There's absolutely like, some him.
I don't care. Wait. That's what I was going to ask you, Brandon. Are you saying that because you don't know if he's playing come week 1, or you don't know where? Because I don't care where he is. He's still going to be the next quarterback off the board, number 6.
If he goes to Denver, which, let's be honest, is there anybody else in play besides Denver if he's not playing in Green Bay?
Doesn't sound like it.
Kind of feels like that's it at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there is. So if he's in Denver, I don't really change him a whole lot from, being in Green Bay. But
you could argue an uptick.
It could be a very late kind of like trade because they've played chicken all the way to the regular season, and then they're making a trade, and maybe it's it's a few weeks before things kind of settle. So I just think there's enough of a difference or a worry there that I might just take the certainty of Dak Prescott, and which I don't know if Curtis Samuel's a huge downgrade from Odell. I guess we can talk about Odell.
Let's jump. Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump right into Odell here with Jarvis Landry making the comments that he made earlier this week. We have 18 teams opening up their mandatory minicamps. Of course, not everyone will be participating in those mandatory minicamps. Jamal Adams, Funston, we learned just before we started this show that he is not at Seattle's mandatory minicamp, which I don't think was too much of a surprise to any of us who follow that situation. But 18 more opening this week. We're going to take a look at some of those teams that have opened this week. We had a few last week. We have 4 teams who aren't having any. They're not going to get together until training camp, but 18 teams that open this week, and 3 of those being teams in the AFC North. I want to look at all 3 of those teams. Let's start with Cleveland. Jarvis Landry, no surprise, saying that Odell Beckham looks amazing. Looks like he can do everything that he could do before the knee injury and then some. Right now, NFFC ADP pegs OBJ as wide receiver 30. These are in drafts conducted just since last week. I narrowed the window to June 7th through today. So we're still looking at a recent window here, but 16 drafts, that's a decent enough number to look at here. Again, wide receiver 30, 73.13 overall at the wide receiver position, sandwiched in between Juju and, as you said, Jake, DJ Chark. So what's the argument? What's the upside argument for OBJ here?
Hey, going to May first, or Brandon was jumping in. So you
no,
went to this Odell Beckham thing.
He said Jake, so I
yeah. See, but I didn't know if that was the Jake as in like
that was a
to
leading
draft,
Jake,
or was that
was a leading Jake?
I didn't tell the difference between the two. So, all right, so fine. But the appeal of Odell Beckham is if he's healthy. You know, whether or not Jarvis Landry is saying he looks great. I mean, everybody looks great at this point of the season. Everybody's in the best shape of their life. We do this every single year, and we roll our eyes at it every single year. We don't need to know that about Odell Beckham, though. We just know Odell Beckham at 100%. Is still a top 10 talent. Whether or not he can get even back to 100% is a big question because, you know, what's 100% now after multiple injuries. But what's the worst case? If Odell Beckham plays 16 games, worst case, he's top 20. He's that good. And you saw who Jarvis Landry, by the way, is going into ridiculous value still right now. In his worst season, he just finished as wide receiver 36 while being banged up a little bit himself and also not playing with Odell Beckham for the season and drawing all that coverage out there. So I think that Landry's a value, Odell Beckham for that value of where he's going is now the injury is baked in, where everybody was still taking him as like a wide receiver 1 in the past because we knew the upside. The upside hasn't changed. So I think that's what it comes down to. It's just the fact that if we knew Odell Beckham was healthy for 16 games, there's no way he's making it out of the top 15 wide receivers.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're still viewing him a little bit too much in the New York Giants lens. I mean, like the relationship with Baker Mayfield hasn't been great. He's seen a lot of targets in Cleveland, but the catch percentage is way down. Now we're talking about a guy who's in his late 20s with injury history, and we know this is probably going to be the most run-heavy team in the league. And they also, haven't. Baker Mayfield, not huge. Does he got a 30-35 touchdown pass season in him? I don't know that he does, but I'm worried about the injuries. I'm worried about the offense. I'm worried about where he's at in his career arc. And I don't think he has top 15 upside anymore if the stars aligned in this offense. So I would personally rather have Jarvis Landry. You mentioned Jarvis Landry as a ridiculous value, and he was the guy I loved going into last year because he never got hurt. He never missed a game. Right. He finally missed a game, but he had the hip surgery and was dealing with that all year and played through it. Had some other ailment that was going on, but the only thing that made him miss a game was COVID. Like that, he was kind of forced out of action. Otherwise, he would have been out there. The guy never misses games. And I think at the value, I think I would easily rather have Jarvis Landry, who I think ends up maybe really close to Odell in terms of production.
Hey, not in terms of style of play, but Jarvis Landry, Anquan Bolden, I feel like there's some parallels there with the never misses a game, not a superstar, but always gives you what he gives you, a little bit underappreciated as he's gotten a little bit older. I feel like there's some similarity between those two guys, and maybe that plays to Jarvis Landry's benefit this season. Odell Beckham, we did see his worst full season his first year in a Browns uniform, so we have an idea of maybe what that looks like. 2019, 74 catches, 1,035 yards, 4 touchdowns. He was wide receiver 25 in half PPR. I'm getting all my acronyms mixed up. Half PPR leagues that season. I think that is a decent facsimile for what his worst season, what a worst case full season looks like for Odell Beckham this year. So I do think at wide receiver 30, he's a little bit undrafted. I mentioned the guys who were going right in front of him, right after him. We've got Juju Smith-Schuster just in front of him, and we've got DJ Chark just after him. If we look at the entire wide receiver position, just the guys in that neighborhood, expand the lens a little bit. Ahead of Juju, you've got Chase Claypool, T. Higgins, Brandon Ayuk. Behind Odell and Chark, you've got Cortland Sutton, Robbie Anderson, Jerry Jeudy, Tyler Boyd. Jake, we'll go to you first on this one. Since you're bullish on Odell, is there anyone else ahead of him you like him better than Juju, Claypool, Higgins, Ayuk, Cooper Kupp, Kenny Galladay, that group of guys?
Not Kenny Galladay, but that's a coin flip for me. Same kind of with Cooper Kupp. We were all excited for Matthew Stafford, but there's no guarantee it's not Robert Woods who benefits more than Kupp does. But I mean, it should be good for both of them. But there was a real real connection of Cup and Jared Goff since day one that they were together. So I think Odell Beckham with Galladay, with Cup in that same conversation, and then pretty much ahead of the rest. I like Brandon Ayuk as much as the next guy, and you can look at my draft profile for him, but you're still talking about a healthy Debo and a healthy Kittle. There's just an offensive like that. That's a lot to ask, Ayuk to get on that level. So he would kind of be in that next tier. I would take him before DJ Chark, who I took again. I already said that at the beginning. And I'm a DJ. You guys know I love DJ Chark.
You are the DJ Chark guy, I would say.
Sutton coming off the injury. The Steelers outside of Deontay Johnson. I know everybody's raving about Ben Roethlisberger. Looks like the best shape of his life. Well, since 5 years ago or something like that. But I think that that's a fair group to put him in, and I'm going to take him ahead of most of those guys.
We're going to transition to the Steelers in a second, but Brandon, since you're bearish on Odell, the guys after him, Chark, Sutton, Robbie Anderson, Jerry Jeudy, Tyler Boyd, anyone you want to put ahead of him?
No, I think I would take all those. I think they're close. I mean, you start talking about Claypool and Ayuk, you're talking about guys that also could be limited in terms of volume based upon the situations they're in. So, but then I might opt for the younger guys that are a little bit more vital, don't have the most recent injury history. So I think I'm going to keep him where he's at. In fact, I have him ranked, I think 33 at wide receiver. So I'm a little bit below even ADP on him. So yeah, I would take those other guys, but talking about Claypool, talk about Juju. I guess we're gonna, as you mentioned, we'll talk about the Pittsburgh situation because we've seen Ben Roethlisberger come off an injury and throw over 600 passes last year. We don't know if that's going to be the case in the Matt Canada world.
Exactly. Well, thank you for that excellent transition. We use that as the peg. The Steelers, one of the teams opening up their mandatory mini camp this week, and it's a new offensive coordinator for Ben Roethlisberger. Matt Canada, his first year as the Steelers offensive coordinator this year, a guy who has been a journeyman through the college ranks before taking over as the Steelers quarterbacks coach last season. Ben, in one way or another, has had Randy Fichtner by his side since 2010. He hasn't had to learn an entirely new offense since Todd Haley's first year in Pittsburgh in 2012. So this is a new look for a guy who is 38 years old, has a big time injury history. We saw what happened to that team last season after, what were they, like 10-0 or something, 9-0 before they took their first loss. And then from that point forward, looked like one of the most beatable teams in the NFL, get bounced relatively easily in the first round of the playoffs by the Browns. What do we make of this offense coming into the 2021 season? I guess most specifically, what do we make of the passing game? Everyone's very excited about Najee Harris and the volume that he's expected to get in Pittsburgh. But I think when you look at Roethlisberger, you look at these three receivers, you look at a untested offensive coordinator who's installing an entirely new system, we don't really have a good handle on what this passing game is going to look like, do we, Jake?
No, and we can go back, though, and we can draw a parallel to Eli Manning, who late in his career had a switch like this. And all the reports at the time were understanding that if you look at the history of quarterbacks late into their career going through an offensive scheme change like this, take a few weeks. It actually took Eli a good 4 to 6 weeks to really get into the flow of things. So if you have that, and you draw that parallel to Ben Roethlisberger, even if Roethlisberger is better physically than he was last year, you still have to incorporate that concern. And you guys know how much I love Deontay Johnson, but I still only have him, and he's the first Steelers wide receiver. I still only have him in wide receiver 25 because of that, because you have Roethlisberger acclimating to a new system. Does that hurt the passing game? Or does he basically show like most every other quarterback into their 30s this late of switching offenses, unless you're Tom Brady and you can do whatever the hell you want. But outside of that, also add balance to the offense with the Najee Harris conversation and not throw the ball 600 times. And I just think you talking about, and we're not even talking about Ben Roethlisberger for drafting him for fantasy, but I think you do downgrade the wide receivers a little bit as a whole. I know there's been a lot of talk about how much better Juju Smith-Schuster is in play action than with not, and you bring that back this year. But again, is he going to throw the ball 600 times? Yeah, I think we'd take the under. And then are the 600 times even like Matt Ryan level throwing it 600 times? So I think that having them between the wide receiver 25 to 35 range seems like the real happy medium there.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree with that. And it kind of sounds like, if you just read into what the offense might look like, sort of sounds like a Kyle Shanahan type of offense where you're running power running game and you're moving wide receivers, jet sweeps and motions and working them across the field and stuff like that. And it kind of feels like that's the way every team is wanting to go right now, or at least a lot of them. I know in Seattle, that's a lot of the talk as well. So, yeah, I think that's going to, as Jake said, is going to limit the upside. We're not going to see the 600 passes, I don't think. And that's with an extra game. I still don't think you're going to get to 600 passes in the 17-game season. And, they're going to be intent on using Najee Harris a lot more and a lot more effectively than what they've seen the last couple of years out of James Conner. And, that's Snell.
Ooh, that's now love a good Leonard Skinner reference. Our Steelers beat writer Mark Cabali has been around this team for a long time. One of the longest tenured Steelers beat writers you're going to be able to find. He's got a great story on this up on The Athletic right now. And he also tweeted out a juicy quote right before we got going from Matt Canada himself saying, we're going to do whatever Ben wants to do. So take that for what it's worth on June 15th. One more AFC North team I want to talk about here is the Baltimore Ravens. We actually got into this team a little bit last week, talking about Lamar Jackson taking more snaps under center this season than he has to this point of his career. Got me thinking a little bit about this team's wide receivers. We know that Marquise Brown, of course, still there, hasn't quite hit the level that we wanted from him. They used the 27th overall pick on Minnesota's Rashad Bateman. They signed Sammy Watkins. Miles Boykin is still lurking around doing whatever Miles Boykin might do. And this team, when you throw Bateman into the mix, has used 4 picks in the last 3 drafts, in the first 3 rounds on wide receivers. Last 3 drafts, first 3 rounds, 4 wide receivers have been drafted. So clearly they are making an investment in getting the ball to their wide receivers more. Whether they are able to do it remains to be seen. I will say that it feels like there's a buying opportunity here when you look at these guys' ADPs. Again, these are since June 7th. You've got Marquise Brown at wide receiver 40, just inside the top 100. Rashad Bateman's at wide receiver 59, pick 154 overall. And then Sammy Watkins way down at wide receiver 83. Am I crazy, or does it feel like at least one of those guys has got to outperform his ADP significantly? Is that a right way to look at this, Brandon?
I guess. I mean, it's just, who is it? And again, you have to kind of believe in that you can teach an old dog and Greg Roman new tricks, and
yes.
and that that Lamar Jackson is going to be a proficient downfield passer, and so I think they're going to. I think they've gotten a lot of flack for the offense that they've run. It's been so run heavy. It's been sort of predictable, especially predictable when you get into the playoffs. Lamar Jackson's 4 games in the playoffs, he's averaging like 13 points per game, where that offense has been during the regular season pushing 30 points week in and week out. So look, it's kind of something's got to change. They're throwing talent around it. That's good. But I'm kind of in the believe it when I see it camp about all this because of, Greg Roman's his rigidity as an offensive coordinator, and then Lamar Jackson's, questionable downfield passing acumen. So we'll see. I think you're right. Somebody will outperform, but kind of putting your finger on who that is going to be sort of tough.
And I actually don't, honestly, because I said this on another podcast as a guest, and I said, let's do some fun with numbers because it's math. If you asked any quarterback to throw the ball 20% more, we'd all be like, that's a ridiculous number. That's not happening. 20% more would only get Lamar Jackson to 500 pass attempts. That's how ridiculously low this offense throws the ball. Threw it for 401 last year, career high. So if you even got to 500, and now you're talking about, let's do target shares. Is anybody getting to 20% target share? And even if they did, that's only 100 targets. It's math. And that's my problem with this offense is I love Bateman. I love Lamar Jackson for a fantasy purpose. I keep saying, if you let him fall to round 6, I'm going to gobble him up every single time. But it's funny, wide receiver 40, you said for Hollywood, my first run through projections has him at 50. Bateman for 59, I have him at 69. Watkins for 83, I have him at, no, not 93, 89. But they're all lower than even their ADP because on the one side, I would not be surprised if one gets into the wide receiver 3 discussion, but I think it's going to either be Sammy Watkins is completely toast or somebody gets hurt or something happens where it just goes to go right because we still haven't even included Mark Andrews. It's just math. Right. It's not going to be 20% for all these guys. It's probably not even going to be 15% for a lot of these guys. And that's the biggest issue is I actually have Lamar Jackson moving up to 467 pass attempts. Nobody on this team, except for Mark Andrews, gets 100 targets, and Mark Andrews barely tops 100 targets.
By the
Mark
way,
Andrews is the complicating factor for sure. What's up, Brandon?
Yeah, just looking at 8 years of Greg Roman as offensive coordinator, the highest he's finished in pass attempts for an offense is 29th. So
29th?
29th, eight seasons, 32, 31, 30, and 129. That was his high water mark.
Oh my!
How'd you pull that up so quick? I would have had to go through like team by team.
Pro Football Reference. I just looked up his. You can look up team ranks for offense.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's four seasons in San Francisco, 2 in Buffalo, and 2 in Baltimore. Yeah.
I mean, you would think that there would be one circumstance where someone would get injured, or he would have a suddenly more pass efficient team, or he would have such a bad defense that he's forced to throw. That's crazy.
Insane. Yeah, really
that's crazy. Wow. So maybe this does beg a Greg Roman question here, because that is just 29 as his high watermark. That is
that would actually represent. They've been 32 each of the last 2 years. So if they get 29 this year, there you go.
Marginal gains might mean something for these guys. It'll be something that we watch as training camp, and we get a few exhibition games under our belt a few months from now.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, guys. Let's jump into a little guess that player. What do you think about that? I actually wanted to give a clue off the top, and I forgot about it. I'm going to give you 2 clues right here. We did this for last week. It was fun. I really want to talk about this guy, so we're definitely going to get it in at the end of the show. So I got 2 clues for you. The first clue, with Greg Roman talk in our back pocket, is that I have a new offensive coordinator this year. So think about these guys who might have some new offensive coordinators, some of the changes that have been made. Clue number 2, I've topped 200 touches once in my 4-year career. So it probably leads you to a certain position, 200 touches, but he's only done it once. In his 4-year career, he also has a new offensive coordinator this season. Let's move over to the AFC East, where you have a couple of teams undertaking mandatory minicamp this week. One of those is the New England Patriots. And this team, of course, brings Cam Newton back in free agency, then goes out and drafts Mac Jones. So we've got a palindromic quarterback battle between Cam and Mac. Is this really a competition? I mean, should we expect this to be a competition, or is this locked up? No doubt about it. Cam Newton is starting week 1, Jake.
I wouldn't say no doubt about it, but I would say unless Cam Newton looks horrible or misses more time or has an injury or something like that, it's going to be Cam Newton. Whether or not it's Cam Newton for the entire season, I don't think I'd put money on that situation. But we've talked about this before too, and the COVID and everything that happened last year. Is Cam Newton admitted himself, it's a lot to come to a new team, come to a playbook and an offense as complicated as Belichick can be, and miss time for the first of all, he missed time. Everybody did in the preseason of trying to learn a lot. And this is why we saw a lot of rookies and people changing teams take a few weeks to get going. We saw some quarterbacks struggle for a good portion of the season. And then he misses time in the middle of the season on top of it and never seemed to get right. Cam Newton is going to be the guy unless, like I said, something has to. I don't know. You just talk about like, oh, he had a bad practice today. Something needs to go wrong. He's going to be the week 1 starter. For fantasy purposes, we can always break that down to another level. But I would bet money on Cam Newton. I wouldn't bet money that he's the week 17 starter. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't even really want to talk about New England. I don't.
Well,
really
let me cut you off then, Brandon, and ask you this: if this is some sort of competition, or if it's something that we could safely say is maybe not a pure week 1 competition, but we wouldn't be surprised if there was some quarterback rumbling, some potential job changes by week 4, week 5. Do we prefer Mac Jones in there over Cam Newton? Cam Newton had a very interesting 2020 season, as you alluded to, Jake, and obviously he had some significant complicating factors. 8 touchdown passes, 10 interceptions. The guy ran for 12 touchdowns and 592 yards and was still just 22nd in points per game at the quarterback position. Not points per game. He was 22nd with 12 rushing touchdowns. I mean, he had a horrendous season through the air. And part of that owes to the just total lack of speed and athleticism that the Patriots had out wide. And they did address that by bringing in Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Jonnu Smith, and Hunter Henry. Surprise, surprise. Both those guys already dealing with minor injuries right now. But I mean, is this a better fantasy situation if we just have Cam running? Or is it a better situation if we have Mac Jones in there, maybe making a little bit of something out of the passing game?
Yeah, I think that's it. That's where I was going to go, is look at you Cam Newton is sort of a crap show throwing the ball, at least last year and many times in many seasons that you watched him. He's had a couple good years, but I think for the most part, I'm looking for the upside of the other players. I'm not thinking about the quarterback for my fantasy team. Cam Newton ran last year, and if that's what you get and you get 22nd at quarterback, that's a modest return for a QB2 in a two QB league. I want Mac Jones with the potential that, his short area accuracy, maybe these tight ends unlock for fantasy, or the running backs in the passing game. Maybe James White's a thing again, or just something, because right now I'm looking at this team and I don't want any of them. I don't want any of them, just like Houston pretty much. And I think Mac Jones gives us better potential for me to want one of these other guys. And that's just kind of wishing for the unknown, and maybe there's something there, because I just feel like with Cam Newton, we know what you're going to get, and it's not a whole lot.
Yeah, that's why I'd rather have Cam, because I'd rather get Cam at the quarterback position for nothing, for free, and then hope, the passing numbers they have to be, if he's okay, they're going to be better than what they were last year. So at least
the greatest hits on repeat today with Odell and Cam.
Hey, look, again, I think
2015
disagree
All-Pro.
about. I mean, no, but and I'm not saying this in like haha, but I thought you did. I mean, do you disagree with what happened last year with Cam? That's got to play into his performance.
What do you mean disagree with? Like,
you mean like that he was hurt and all that?
Like that he missed time, the playbook with no preseason, missing time in the middle of the season. That, like, we're not throwing it out completely, but that we, Brandon, do you put it this way? If you knew that Cam Newton was starting 16 games, you expect better than last year, don't you?
I guess. I mean, he was hurt and he had, the slow run up to preseason. I expect better for everybody, but there's like, I don't know, Ryan Fitzpatrick, other people like probably have the same excuse. But, if you're a veteran, you roll with it.
No, yeah, I'm not saying it's a guarantee. What I was coming back to, and what I was going to say is why I disagree with you, is because at least if Cam's the starting quarterback, I can go get Cam late and hope he rediscovers his arm, and then he still runs. You mentioned all the rushing touchdowns, Beller. So you have that. You have somebody that could push the QB1 tier. It's a lot to ask, but I'm just saying he could. If Mac Jones is the starter, we don't care about Mac Jones from a fantasy perspective. If Mac Jones is the starter, we barely start to care more. You were like, oh, I might care a little bit more about the receiver. So that's what I'm saying is, like, I feel like whether it's Cam, whether it's Mac, we don't care a ton. We kind of see Hunter Henry and Jonnu as fringe tight end ones. Maybe they both hit. Maybe Aguilar repeats what he just did with Las Vegas, but even so, that's still wide receiver like 4 range. Or maybe it's Jacoby Myers, but still also only wide receiver. That's what I'm saying. Is like Mac Jones, I agree with you, makes them all better, but I don't even think he makes them that more relevant to the fact where I think the biggest boost is that if Cam surprises as a quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, the supporting weapons just have to be better this year than they were last year. In addition to all the additions that they made to this team last year, you also had Jacoby Myers didn't play till week 7. So you get a full season of Jacoby Myers, who, no one's going to confuse Jacoby Myers with Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams, but he's a legit piece. He's a legit receiver in that offense. It's going to look a lot better than it did a season ago. So I do think that that's interesting for whoever ends up being the quarterback on this team, that you just have a lot. You're going to have way more options in this offense than you did last season. How those options play out in the fantasy world, that remains to be seen. I think the one thing we do know is that if Cam Newton's the starter, you're going to have the rushing. Yeah, what's up?
We'll play the Nando game. You have to take 3 receiving weapons from the Patriots or 3 receiving weapons from the Texans, or you have to sit and poop every time you do your podcast.
Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to for sure take one of the 2 teams.
I don't think you guys would like if I was sitting and pooping during the podcast. I don't think you guys would appreciate it. I'd be fine with it, but
that's disgusting. And it sounds like if you're going to have some issues.
I'm leaning that direction, guys. By the way,
sounds like you're going to have some
Nando
issues
does that.
after the podcast. If that's the case, I mean, at least with the Texans, you get Brandon Cooks, right? At least you've got Brandon Cooks there,
who had the Rams offense, the Saints offense, and the Patriots offense in the Brady heyday. So, and Deshaun Watson last year. So this will be the litmus test on Brandon Cooks, if he's just always good, or if he just has always been in a really outstanding.
You didn't tell me who your other 2 from the Texans were, though.
Yeah, I'm just saying, at least you get Brandon Cooks. I'll take.
Then what?
Can I take
Nico
David
Collins?
Johnson? I'll take David Johnson. Can I
No,
take David Johnson?
I said receivers.
Oh,
You can
man.
include tight ends in the receiving department, but receivers.
All right, so we're basically looking at like
Randall Cobb and Nico Collins.
Cooks, Cobb, and Nico Collins. Cooks, Cobb, and Nico Collins against what? Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, and Jacoby Myers, or take one of the. Can I do team tight end for the Patriots?
Yeah. No, you got to take both of them. You can't just take.
I would take both of them and Jacoby Myers probably.
I'm gonna lean Patriots here.
But that's the point, and that's I think that we're kind of what it comes back down to is like even if the only person in the world, and honestly, you know what? Before Tom Brady left, he wasn't even doing that much for what he was dealing with either. Like there's very few quarterbacks that could do anything with that roster right now.
Yeah. It's totally true. I mean, we saw that the last year. That was a bad offense by the end of the season, a predictable offense. And that game where the Patriots upset or the Titans upset them in that wild card game 2 years ago, what was that final score? Like 13-10 or so, or like, they had Logan Ryan had the pick six to end that game, but it was what? Yeah, we're right. Like 20-10, something like that. A game that never even really felt that close. That Patriots offense has now like put together a season and a half where they have been nothing on the offensive side of the ball. We could be looking at that again this season. I want to talk about the New York Jets for a second here. We were all starting to get pretty excited about Elijah Moore, weren't we? We were feeling it. We were seeing, maybe Jamison Crowder can't work anything out. Jamison Crowder still a valuable guy to a contending team. Maybe they move him out. And then, of course, everything works out just yesterday. The Jets and Crowder renegotiate his contract. They come to some sort of agreement. Jamison Crowder is at mandatory minicamp. Is this just
for
total
now.
Cold water for now? Good point. But is this cold water on Elijah Moore completely, Jake?
No, but it is. Well, it is some. Look, I think we talked about it, and then we were saying that even if you are a fan of Elijah Moore, where he was going in drafts was starting to get already crazy, just because of forgetting that Corey Davis was brought in, and then whether or not you agree with me on the fact that Corey Davis could struggle being a number one with that kind of attention and facing Gilmore if Gilmore's around. We talked about that. We talked about Crowder still being there. I myself thought he would just outright get cut. This is a different situation. That's why I said for now, because there's been some reports saying that the restructuring could lead to a trade instead. Even so, we were also forgetting about Brandon's boy, Denzel Mims. It's just, it's kind of, I'm getting what we've done for years, and I'm just getting the feeling that once again, it's going to be, I'm not drafting Jets unless it's Michael Carter. And that's a completely different conversation because it's the running back situation. But yeah, I love Michael Carter, but the Jets wide receivers, I think week in and week out, even if Crowder's gone, we were already looking at the fact that Corey Davis is probably going to be the one that puts up the most beneficial weeks, but Mims would probably factor in. Elijah Moore was going to factor in. People are still doing the Chris Herndon thing to a degree, but it was like, who is it going to be? You're also playing with a rookie quarterback. You're playing with a rookie quarterback in a very tough division, especially for defenses now. Those three defenses alone are top half of the league. So I was kind of out to begin with, but if Crowder doesn't leave, you're even more out. And I think Crowder doesn't only hurt Elijah Moore. I think he hurts Denzel Mims too, because there's talk about Denzel Mims running with the twos. And we talk about this all the time. And I got to pivot real quick is don't always read into, he's running with the ones. You can only evaluate players when they run with the ones. Some of these teams are trying to get evaluation on players by putting them with the ones and seeing what they can do. But if you're already putting Mims with the two and he's not running with the ones, says they don't want to evaluate him yet. By the way, I still haven't even thrown out the fact that Keelan Cole.
I was waiting for the Keelan Cole reference to get dropped.
So
he's there too.
I'll say right now, the only one I'm buying is Jamison Crowder because he's free. He's all the way down in 80s, 90s of wide receivers. But he still might not even be on this team from what some of those rumors are.
Yeah, and if he's not on a team, then getting him in that cheap, he's going to some place where he's really wanted, and he'll probably be plugged into a sizable role right away. So there you go. I think the only reason we're having this conversation is because there's reports that Elijah Moore looked like the far and away the best receiver in shorts and non-contact drills and 7-on-7. Like, that's dumb. It's like, it's the same thing that we had going into the draft. It's like there's some stuff that's going to have to be figured out in terms of one of these wide receivers is going to probably have to go, and it's probably going to be Jamison Crowder. That he redid his deal just makes it more trade friendly, and so now they can maybe get a return for him instead of having to outright cut him.
Elijah Moore spent some time in college with DK Metcalf and AJ Brown. He overlapped with those guys, so maybe he picked a thing or two up from them.
How to put on 30 pounds of muscle and a couple inches of height?
I'm just saying, right? Iron sharpens iron.
How did their quarterback not get himself drafted with that crew? Like,
can I say this real quick, because they were talking about since the Julio trade, has there been a more physically imposing duo in the NFL history?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of lists out there, and I think you could argue they're number one. But could you imagine if Metcalf and AJ Brown were on the same team together?
Yeah.
Holy hell!
Yeah. The most imposing duo was actually in college.
Yeah, it was
exactly.
a college team.
That's what I'm saying. Can you imagine back together in the NFL? That's ridiculous.
It was a college team at Mississippi, right?
Sure. I mean,
a team that went
we'll welcome
5 and
AJ
7.
Brown.
They went 5 and 7 that last year with AJ Brown and DK Metcalf as teammates.
That's like the Mettenberger team that he had, and it's like,
yeah. Odell,
how were you
OBJ,
that bad?
or Odell, Jarvis, Jeremy Hill.
Yeah. That was just that's right there when you should have known that Mettenberger was never going to be anything in the NFL.
Yeah. You can't succeed with those guys at the college level. Probably not going to click for you in the NFL. Someone who maybe it has clicked a little bit for, at least in what we expect of him, is Nick Mullins, you guys. And Nick Mullins making a little bit of news, signing with the Eagles as their backup quarterback. Now, Nick Mullins, fantasy irrelevant until and unless there's an injury to Jalen Hurts. But he's a legitimate backup. We've seen him come in, have to put up some fires for San Francisco, have to start some games for San Francisco. He's competent. He's competitive. That team didn't fall apart when they had to lean on Nick Mullins. And it just has me wondering if we should be questioning Jalen Hurts as a top 10 quarterback, only because this is all based on him as a runner. That's the reason why we're talking about Jalen Hurts as a top 10 quarterback. Should there be growth as a passer? Yes. Could there be immense growth as a passer? I think yes. That team should be a lot healthier this season than it was last year. All those things point toward arrow up on Jalen Hurts, and he is going to run, and he's going to run effectively. We know all of that, but his fantasy value is based entirely on what he is going to do as a runner, which is another way of saying that we don't all fully buy in on him as a passer yet. So what if, let's just paint a scenario where the Eagles are like 1-4 and Hurts has just been dreadful throwing the ball. Could he be a good fantasy quarterback, but a bad enough real-life quarterback that he gets benched now that they have a legitimate backup in Nick Mullins? Are you looking at that in any way, Jake?
No, because I already disagree. That's why I was shaking my head no. As I actually don't think that, look, I think everybody's crapping way too much on Hurts as a passer. Does he have progression issues? And that's not an assumption that I'm not making that off the assumption a lot of people make with quarterbacks like him. Does he have that? But yes, a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of rookie quarterbacks will have that. That's why it's not exclusive to him. Has he also shown, and I'm talking about college, is he also shown, and I'm going to come to the NFL, obviously, has he shown a great pocket presence and throwing his guys open and placement and how much of a leader he was on top? And I'm talking purely passer because we know the rushing upside. We don't have to get into that. Yep. But we know all that. We also know that the fact that I'm going to go to Emory Hunt, a boy who compared him to Dak Prescott, and I think that's a great comparison. And what I said in my pre-draft write-up is if you're going to compare him to Dak Prescott, which is valid, let's also talk about this. If we knew Dak Prescott was Dak Prescott coming out of college, would he have not gone in the first round, inside the top 15, inside the top 10, much
inside
higher?
The top 3?
I mean, there were people who did not want Dak Prescott to get an opportunity when he first came into college, or didn't think he deserved one, or when he struggled initially, thought he was done for. Were there signs as a passer that he's going to struggle yet last year? Absolutely. His passer rating, his on target, his completion percentage, his catchable balls, all that concerning. There was also plenty of upside. You don't throw 300 yards 2 games in a row, even against the worst competition. I don't care who you're facing. You just don't do what he did in those 2 games and not be a competent passer. And the reason I keep throwing out and say like competent passer is because I don't think he's going to throw for 4,200 yards and 30 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts doesn't need to. Lamar Jackson doesn't need to. And I think he's honestly, if you look at the college, could argue has a higher ceiling as a passer. So I'm going to bring in Daniel Jones as I do this conversation every single time. Daniel Jones' season last year, didn't even throw for 3,000 yards, threw 11 touchdowns and a bunch of interceptions.
15 picks, right?
Yes. You take Daniel Jones, 2,900 yards and 11 touchdowns, and you add 800 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns, you get QB 12. He could be a miserable passer. And he's going to be, but he's not going to be. And I think that's that's why I was shaking my head. No, I don't think he's going to be miserable.
I think what Beller is saying though is we know that's what the potential is, but is like, so to your point, like, could he be good for fantasy but get benched? I think it's possible. I mean,
Mhm.
but I think they're all in on Hurts. If they're benching
Yeah.
Hurts, that's just like, that's a doomsday scenario for Philly, because that means they don't have their quarterback of the future, because it's not Nick Mullins. But I would say for fantasy that if I'm taking Jalen Hurts, and I do have him ranked as the top 10 fantasy quarterback, or maybe 11, I am taking a luxury backup. I am taking either like Trevor Lawrence as like the 13th quarterback off the board, or Joe Burrow as a top 15 quarterback as my second guy. I'm taking someone else with upside, and I'm making sure I'm just got my bases covered, because I don't have a whole lot of faith in Jalen Hurts on a week in, week out basis being like, he could be an absolute train wreck. We saw it. And I still have a lot of questions.
He was also put in an offense that wasn't designed for him. This offense is now designed for him. And this
I'm
is
Who is?
saying,
I mean, I can't even remember off the top of my head who was healthy on that team at the end of the year. Like Greg,
it was down to Travis Fulgham, Greg Ward.
Greg Ward.
It was Greg Ward again. Greg Ward continues to be the only he's the only receiver standing in week 15 every year somehow.
Well, I mean, his two top receivers are going to be a rookie and a half. I mean, because Jalen Reagor basically gets a half season. Didn't have a preseason, was hurt for a lot of it. So
but we talked about Jalen Reagor too, about being miscast and not being an outside number one wide receiver. Let's talk about the offensive line too. Offensive line is part of the reason that Carson Wentz was like limping at the end of the year. And part of the reason he got benched. Yeah, Carson Wentz was a terrible passer last year for most of it too, because no offensive line, terrible weapons. Even his best, you could argue, being Goddard, was banged up for most of the year. And again, Hurts comes into an offense similar to Lamar Jackson as a rookie. Like, the offense wasn't made for him. Now the offense is made for him. What you're going with, Brandon, is like, I think we both agree with, they're all in on Hurts. Like, if he doesn't start every single game outside of injury, it's because he bombed and they're thinking elsewhere in next year's draft.
Yeah, it's reset
I think he's
time.
I think he's a good enough passer that doesn't happen now that he has an offense built around him and the weapons are healthy.
Yeah, and I'm still happy to
on whether I believe he's a good enough passer. We'll see. I'm
more shocked that they cut Jamie Newman to bring in Nick Mullins. That was my thing. That kind of tells me like maybe Joe Flacco's not healthy. Like, I don't know what you're doing that for.
Yeah, good point.
It's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. And I'm with. I just wanted to have this conversation, but I am in on Jalen Hurts as a top 10 quarterback. I think your point is well taken there too, Brandon, that you might want to back him up quicker than you back up your quarterback typically, just in case, because you can still get. I mean, if we're just going by NFFC ADP right now, Jalen Hurts is number 10. Matthew Stafford's number 11. Aaron Rodgers is number 12. I gotta believe there's some uncertainty as to his status involved in that. So we can put him to the side, but then you've got Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, and then it starts to fall off a little bit. I think we would all agree that Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, Carson Wentz, Baker Mayfield starts to take a little bit of a dip at that point. So I think you probably want to get back.
I want Lawrence or Burrow if I'm taking Hurts. That's kind of who I'm looking at.
Because then we're getting into like that I'm not sure if it even exists, sort of that mythic streamer group of guys where, like, in theory, those of us in the industry sit around and say, yeah, week 3, Kirk Cousins, you can stream him. But in most people's leagues, everyone owns a backup quarterback to begin with. So maybe it's not actually possible.
Because it's doo-doo. Every single league, at least even industry. Look how many industry leagues we do. In the flex leagues, look how many half the league still drafts a second quarterback. So you're out 18.
Super flex.
I mean, that's another conversation altogether.
Let's have another conversation right now. Let's have it in the NFC East, though, and keep it here and go with the Dallas Cowboys. Amari Cooper, they're already saying uncertain for the start of training camp because of an ankle issue that cropped up a couple of weeks ago. Hasn't run for 2 weeks. At the time, they said he probably wouldn't run for another 2 or 3 weeks. And Amari Cooper, a veteran, a guy who doesn't need training camp. He just needs training camp to maybe make sure the legs are fresh, the legs are healthy, he's good to go. The dude doesn't need to take a competitive snap in the preseason. I think we all agree on that. What I would maybe be a little bit concerned with is just wide receiver, ankle, foot injuries who don't get a ton of time to warm up before the season. Do they lag to start the season? You've got a Dallas offense that won't rely on him if it doesn't need to because of CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Ezekiel Elliott, all these options that they're going to have offensively. And that's where I start to get a tiny bit, just a tiny bit for now. Maybe it'll be a little more in the next month or two, but just a tiny bit concerned right now because I would like to see him fully up to speed by week 1. He's the wide receiver 17 by ADP right now, sandwiched in between Robert Woods and Chris Godwin. And like, if we don't see any of him and they're still talking about, yeah, he's going to play week 1, but the ankle's been a problem, I find it hard to take him at that ADP. Where are you at on this, Brandon?
Yeah, we're June 15th. If we're still talking about an ankle being an issue in August 15th, and I'm not going to start drafting in earnest for any leagues that I care about until after that date.
Mm-hmm.
If that's still an issue and they're still talking about he could be week one, there's no way I'm not moving him down. But it seems like there's plenty of run-up time for this to get healthy and to become a non-factor and something we're not talking about by mid-August. But I guess we have to let this one play out a little bit.
Yeah, the fact that he's coming out of OTAs already with the surgery being in hindsight, that's a little bit concerning for the fact that, this isn't like he just had surgery type of situation. So, I wouldn't even say August 15th, Brandon. I said if we're still talking about this late July, then we start to be a little bit concerned.
About when camps open up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if the next camp situation opens up, and I agree with you, Beller, doesn't need to be out there. You would like to see some reps with Dak because Dak missed a lot of the season, just to see them, get that rapport back that it hasn't gone anyway. You just want the reps. If we get back to the camp in July and now he's still not out there, then I'm going to be more concerned. I'm not concerned as of today. How much I love CeeDee Lamb. He led off my breakout wide receivers. And what did I say when that happened? His ADP was it's gonna become cost prohibitive. It's already getting there. You tell me wide receiver.
I wanted
13,
to bring that back up. I wanted to bring it back up, even though we already talked about it. I couldn't believe it. Wide receiver 13 right now in ADP. I love CeeDee. I love him. But that's crazy.
That might not even be its peak if Amari's not out there at the end of July. It might even climb higher. But the appealing one here comes that I don't like drafting Amari Cooper, but if you're going to start giving him around wide receiver 20, start taking him there. As of today, that's what I'm saying. As of today, I'm not concerned. But the interesting thing is I do think Michael Gallup is going to be inconsistent. But at the same time, you're going to drop them all down to wide receiver 47. And then if Cooper does miss time, wide receiver 47 feels like the floor for Gallup, let alone if Cooper misses time.
Let's just say that it happens that Amari Cooper just isn't ready to start the season, ends up missing September, slow playing into October, and essentially gets in half of a season. How high are you in that kind of scenario? Would you be pushing up CeeDee Lamb?
I don't think he's gonna. I'm looking at my wide receivers right now.
How high could you push him? If you.
That's what I'm saying. At 13, I have McLaurin. I'm still taking McLaurin. Unless Cooper was done, like you said, hey, Cooper's not coming back this year, I would take CeeDee Lamb. But that's right about and now we're talking in front of him, Allen Robinson and Keenan Allen. I'm not taking him over those guys. Hopkins,
Michael Thomas,
Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson. Yeah.
Your boy Metcalf. Are we really going to push him over those guys? And he's already at that level right now.
I think the big winner if Cooper doesn't play isn't CeeDee Lamb because he's already being
Michael
priced
Gallup.
up.
It's Gallup.
Yeah,
it's Gallup without question. And I think the Gallup stuff that we're talking about makes a lot of sense. The one thing that I pull back from is last year before Dak got hurt, Gallup wasn't getting a ton of opportunity in that offense early on in the season. He had 5 targets week 1, 5 week 2. Week 3, he popped on 9 targets against the Seattle Seahawks, 6 grabs, 138 yards and a touchdown. 5 week 4, and then 4 week 5. That was the week that kind
of turned into Marquise Brown.
Yeah,
right? Just remember, Cam threw for 400 yards against the early season Seahawks as well. So
that's true.
Throw that Seahawks one out of there. So.
400 yards 3 weeks in a row.
It feels like unless something dramatically changes in their offense, the targets are not really going to get more than 5 per game for Gallup, so long as all 3 of those guys are healthy.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So that's where it comes in. But I do think with where he's going, wide receiver 47 right now, 120 overall, that's a totally appropriate spot to dive in on Michael Gallup. Someone at a much higher draft slot is Saquon Barkley. And this is another thing that we've talked about, the potential of the Giants slow playing things with him coming back from the ACL this year. Saquon himself non-committal for week 1. I don't know if this was just yesterday or over the weekend, but he's already said that, we'll take it as it comes and see where the health is as training camp progresses and all that. When do we get worried in this situation? And I think it's maybe a different spot because we're now talking about a guy who's got a couple of injuries, significant injury last year, and still getting drafted very highly. Right now, he has slipped a little bit in ADP over the last week or so. He's down to 8 behind Jonathan Taylor, Ezekiel Elliott, and Travis Kelce. Next up, Austin Eckler, Cam Akers, Tyreek Hill, Najee Harris. You get into that group of guys. When do we start getting worried enough about Saquon Barkley, Jake, that we're pushing him behind that next group of guys?
Week 1.
So not till then. So draft season, you're good.
Because I'm gonna go back to like the Le'Veon Bell situation when he was suspended going into the season, and we kind of jokingly said, "Well, that's fine because we just wanted to be healthy." Ezekiel Elliott, like, just don't get hurt. Like, you talk about, or we're talking about Amari Cooper, is like we don't need to see him before week 1 to know that he can play. You can throw that even more onto running backs. We don't need to see running backs. And the biggest thing that running backs, and you could talk about rookies, is the fact that a lot of it usually has to do with assignments. It's not even the fact that, oh my God, they're going to struggle behind knowing what this offensive line is going to do. Obviously, more reps can never hurt as long as you don't get hurt. But
as long as they don't literally hurt.
Right. Barkley, I'm not worried about. Even if he's brought along slowly, maybe week 1, 2, and 3, he gets 14 touches instead of 20. Then that's fine because I just want Barkley healthy at the end of the season on top of it. Like, that's the thing. Is like, I'd rather give up a little bit of value at the beginning of the season than at the end. For everybody out there. Go back to Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook at the beginning of the season when he was brought, that's actually probably the best example. Dalvin Cook wasn't until about week 5 that year before he was really Dalvin Cook. And if you told me that right now, you said, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have Barkley 100% by week 5, going to be a little bit frustrating to start. I'd still take him as the third running back behind Cook, maybe fourth, depending on your scoring and which way you want to go, but he's still going there for me. So unless we get down to the end of draft season, it's going to be too late at that point. And they're like, oh man, he might even be benched for the first week just to make sure. That I'm no concern.
Yeah. I mean, we don't draft for September. And like if you told me that Barkley averages 10 touches in September, but then you get the full Barkley for the final 3 months, I'm in.
Barkley.
And, I haven't. Full Barkley. I am at number 6 right now, but I will say that look he had an ACL injury, right? And it was week 2.
Week 2.
Yep. Adrian Peterson, what was he in his late 20s when he had like an ACL injury, like at the very end of the year, and he was back in week 1? Like, doesn't it seem a little bit weird for someone as young as Barkley that we're talking about this as sort of like it's iffy that he'll be ready to go for week 1? Like, that's almost 3 months away still.
I think it's also a different style.
Yeah.
With how
style of injury?
No, different style of how he runs on his legs. And that's you could talk about how much more lateral movement that he puts on his knees versus the way that Adrian Peterson runs. I'm not
violent, and he moved his legs a lot. And
no, I know. I'm just speculating why maybe they're being more cautious. I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Well, that's why I'm just like speculating that it's weird that there's this not a slam dunk that he'll be ready. Like typically with these ACL injuries over the last several
inside injuries, we should ask them.
Yeah, we should. What's going on? What
could
be the concern above and beyond the normal ACL injury, which guys have been coming back from a lot faster than this?
Maybe it's also obfuscation on their part. Maybe they just don't want to get too far in front of it just in case something happens, or they see no reason to be completely truthful with the world on June 15th, this far out from the start of the season. I think that could be a play here too.
Yeah, I think that's right. And again, we're talking about it on June 15th, and don't do your drafts until August, and you'll have a lot better information by then.
Yes, absolutely. So you guys are both in the camp of so long as he is playing week 1, I'm cool with where he is right now.
Yes. Yeah. Kind of the same thing with Joe Burrow, right? We're all in the same train with Joe Burrow. Like, kind of talking the same. I hope he's ready for week 1. We're feeling pretty good about Joe Burrow in general for 2021.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's wrap things up with our guess that player, our mystery player. So the first 2 clues, I will go over them once more. Clue number 1, I have a new offensive coordinator this season. Clue number 2 is I've topped 200 touches once in my 4-year career. Here is clue number 3. Get out of the way. I had a little pop up there. Get out of the way, little Google Doc pop up. Clue number 3. Among running backs who played in both 2019 and 2020, so a little bit of a thing there, I'm 8th in half PPR points per game in those 2 seasons. So, no one who was a rookie basically in 2020 is what I'm getting at there. Among running backs who played in 2019 and 2020, I'm 8th in half PPR points per game over the last 2 seasons. I have a new offensive coordinator this year. I've topped 200 touches once in my 4-year career. Who is our guess that player?
Austin Eckler.
Bingo! Austin Eckler is the guy here. I love Austin Eckler this season, guys. I know we could, read too much into Joe Lombardi going to the Chargers, but I don't care. I want to read all that. I want to read into that and then some. I love Austin Eckler this season.
Well, I think the thing that you can love is that there's not a bunch of high volume wide receiving or tight end targets. There's one. It's Keenan Allen, and then Mike Williams is kind of a big play guy that doesn't get a ton of volume. Jared Cook's kind of the same way. Doesn't get a ton of volume. That could be Eckler. That could be Eckler literally filling the Alvin Kamara role, where if you play 16 games, he might push 100 catches. I think that's legit. So I see why you love it. I see why you love him. I get it. Anything, Jay?
I don't know. I mean, I don't have really much to add to Austin Eckler. Yeah, he loves fantasy. That's always a good thing. He loves fantasy on top of it. But we've been gushing about Austin Eckler for years. I definitely agree with you.
He went to Western Colorado. It's the highest athletic facility in elevation.
No, speaking of the other Barkley thing, I'm trying to look at the camera at the same time to figure out why she keeps walking back around the back of the house.
Is she being full Barkley?
She's being like a kid, like she knows I'm on air and is like.
I think Beller's given up on us.
So I think he lost his headset. That's what it was.
He lost his headset. Yeah, things have gone awry here.
I've got a malfunction over here. Oh no! Wait a minute. Keep talking about Austin Eckler. I missed it. Preferences, audio, speaker. There we go. I'm back. I got a phone on my phone, and my AirPods switched over to my phone, and then I couldn't get him back connected to the computer.
We said some pretty amazing stuff while you were out there.
I assume it was all very complimentary about Austin Eckler. I can only assume that's what it was, because I don't know. I mean, you look at the running back position, and sorry to you guys and sorry to the listeners if this is just a complete repeat of what was just said while I was trying to fix my headphone malfunction. I mean, I think there's a top 5, maybe a top 3 season in him with things. I mean, obviously things would have to go his way a little bit, but like, and I'm not taking him as a number top 3.
That was my question is, okay, you think he has top 5, top 3 potential. Where are you taking him in a draft?
Like, the only people who I would like guarantee are going to be better than him are McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook.
I want to know, as a Wisconsin guy, if you're willing to take him ahead of Jonathan Taylor.
I mean, I want to be willing to take him over Jonathan Taylor. I just feel like everything is set up so well for Jonathan Taylor with that offense and what we saw from him over the second half of last season. I think you can make an argument that Jonathan Taylor has one of the, if not the safest floor, maybe behind McCaffrey. And I'm not going to throw injuries into the mix here, but one of the safest floors, I think, belongs to Jonathan Taylor. Probably not the ceiling of all those guys who he's getting drafted around, but an incredibly safe floor. But man, I mean, I would not be like, Austin Eckler as a top 3 running back would not shock me this season.
Well, the problem is Eckler's going to go probably 100% in the 10 to 14 range overall.
Yes.
So if you're sitting there at 9 or 8, there's just no chance you're getting him on the comeback. So you have to make that. You have to make the call if you're willing to reach 1 or 2 picks early in round 1.
I think I am very comfortable going with him over like the top receivers, Travis Kelce, Cam Akers, Najee Harris, Nick Chubb. Like that's a relatively easy selection for me to go Eckler personally.
Yeah, I mean, full PPR 100%, half PPR. It's still working that out, but
Jake, I missed all your great Eckler stuff. Can you just summarize it for me in like a sentence or two?
No, it was basically Brandon summarized it already, and then I was talking about the fact that Barkley was being like an annoying kid and kept bugging me while we're on a podcast.
Yeah, well, you were messed up. We had like about 1% Austin Eckler talk.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at the camera that I have over there for when I'm not home, and it's because she keeps walking back and forth, and I don't know what the hell she's doing.
Oh my God, what a perfect moment, right? I've got a headphone snafu. The dog Barkley comes in after hearing all of our Saquon Barkley chat, wanting to get in on the fun. It's really a perfect podcast moment and a perfect time for us, I think, to sign off on this episode of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. We are back with you next week. You can get in the door at The Athletic, $3.99 a month, theathletic.com/fantasyfootballpod. For Jake and Brandon, I am Michael Beller. We'll talk to you in a week. See ya.